everyone. Welcome to Being Patient Brain Talks. I'm Deborah Kan, founder of Being Patient. We've been talking a lot lately about early detection of Alzheimer's, vis-a-vis blood testing, lots of changes in technology. Well, today we are going to talk about retinal scan, actually looking for biomarkers of Alzheimer's through your eyes. And joining me is Catherine Bornbaum. She is from a company called RetiSpec, which is actually using this type of technology right now in clinical trials. So, Catherine, great to see you and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Okay, so we were just talking about this, and just to really give people who aren't familiar with this technology the background on it. I mean, we've known for quite a while that you can detect biomarkers like amyloid through the eyes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When was it first discovered? And tell me a little bit about, how it was discovered.
Yeah, so the ability to detect amyloid in the eye has an extensive body of work. It's been investigated for, oh my goodness, more than, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And we have investigators from all over the world coming to similar conclusions. So this tells us that there's really something there. And a number of folks have gone about it in different ways, either using different tracers, looking at tissue studies, looking at animal studies, and obviously clinical studies in humans. So we have a wide body of evidence telling us that there are pathologic changes that are happening in the eye, and also structural and functional changes that happen in the eyes of individuals who have Alzheimer's disease that are unique and different from the eyes of individuals who do not have Alzheimer's disease. So amyloid beta is one of the most commonly known and sort of most advanced from a technologic perspective. But there are certainly other markers that are very promising, and we hope to see those in the future as well.
So, what about, I had heard in the past, before I knew much about Alzheimer's detection, about cases where you can detect a brain tumor through a retinal scan. How is this technology much the same in terms of seeing brain tumors through the eyes?
That is a really great question. So, and it also touches on a really interesting point that, sometimes your eye doctor can detect things that are happening in your brain you wouldn't necessarily anticipate. So generally, when somebody's detecting signs of a brain tumor through the eye, they're looking for signs of swelling in the back of the eye. It's a condition called papilledema. And what this is, it's sort of a physical manifestation of the pressure in the head manifesting in the eye. And so in Alzheimer's disease, we can see some structural changes that happen in Alzheimer's disease as a proxy. So certain layers of the back of the eye change. So you have a thinning of the retinal nerve fiber layer. You have changes to the ganglion cell layers. I'll spare you further technical details, but suffice it to say, there are structural changes that are happening in the eye. We also see changes in proteins and inflammation and the vascular structures that mirror what's happening in the brain. And this is really because the retina, which is the back of the eye, is embryologically and biologically brain tissue. So it shares those characteristics. And as you continue to grow and age and evolve, it still reflects and serves as a very good proxy for what's happening in the brain.
Okay, so when we're talking about amyloid plaque in the brain, so is it what can you see that earlier, like in a pre-symptomatic stage? Because we're talking about blood tests, and we know early detection, and in some cases, before a patient ever experiences is symptomatic, you can detect the proteins of amyloid in your bloodstream. Is it much the same in a scan? And if so, how early can you detect those abnormalities?
Yeah, so that is a really interesting question. The answer is yes, we can detect those signs early in the preclinical or pre-symptomatic stage. And we know this from a number of studies that have been conducted, most recently with RetiSpec's use in the BioHermes 1 study that was sponsored by the Global Alzheimer's Platform. And so in this study, we scanned individuals who were pre-symptomatic or healthy controls. And then we also followed and scanned folks who had mild cognitive impairment and later stage disease. And what we found is that individuals who were deemed preclinical or pre-symptomatic, but who had elevated amyloid PET, we could detect that change. So RetiSpec found these folks to be positive for amyloid, even though they had no symptoms. And their amyloid PET scans confirm that. And so we've seen this in multiple studies, which tells us that the eye is a really, really important tool for early detection. It can give you a really important signal of what's going on in your brain long before you start to have any symptoms, and is really, really accessible, non-invasive, super simple to do. So I'm really excited about that particular use case.
How easy are these scans to administer? Is it immediate? Like, is it kind of like the brain tumor scenario when the optician is looking through the eyes and sees abnormalities and knows right away? Or does it take a certain extent of lab processing and analytics?
Yeah, so it is very, very real-time instant results. So the experience itself is just like going to the eye doctor. We use the same cameras that are already in place in eye doctors' offices. So it's a very simple, familiar experience. You just have pictures of your eyes taken, and then the images are analyzed by the RetiSpec software. And then a report is generated in real time. You can click the button and get the report. And so this will tell you your likely amyloid PET status in real time. So one important thing to note is that you really do need the deep learning model or the AI in order to detect that signal, because it's not something that a human looking into your eye will be able to see. We're essentially doing spectroscopy non-invasively in the eye. And so you really do need the camera and the software in order to have this information. But once you have that, it is real time, no waiting. It's incredible.
So it is getting really interesting in the Alzheimer's diagnostic space. You had earlier mentioned amyloid and other things. So I'm thinking now, can you see the tau? Can you see the inflammation? We know the pathology of Alzheimer's. The presumed pathology is beta amyloid tau inflammation. And usually it's not until a person is in the inflammatory state that they actually see symptoms of Alzheimer's. So I'm curious about what exactly you can see through the eyes.
Yeah, so based on the body of evidence that exists from incredible researchers around the world, we believe that there are a number of biomarkers or things we'll be able to detect in the future, including inflammatory markers, vascular signs, some of which we can already see, tau certainly, NFL, synuclein. And I think the evidence from tissue studies and early clinical work suggests that this is likely possible. What I'm really excited about is the fact that there are a number of studies underway, and some of which we've completed, where we're able to capture a wide variety of biomarkers all at once. So things like the BioHarmonies 2 study, where you have over 1,000 participants from representative samples across various stages of disease who are being so well characterized. And then when we have this strong evidence base, AI models thrive on really good, clean, robust data. And so this gives us a really good starting point for that. Our goal is to have this technology be sort of a simple eye scan where you can have tons of information about your brain health and neurodegenerative processes in a very simple real-time experience.
Yeah, and I'm also curious I mean, we have a live audience right now. I'm wondering how early would people want to know if they were on the Alzheimer's track? So if you guys have any opinions, just put it in the chat here. But in the meantime, Barry is asking, which is a relevant question, can a person with Alzheimer's go blind? Because, and I guess what would the impact if there is eye damage related to neurodegeneration or not to detection?
Yeah, so I'll state this or I'll clarify, I'm not an ophthalmologist or optometrist, but my understanding is that there is a relationship between Alzheimer's disease and certain eye conditions, including glaucoma. And so glaucoma, if untreated, certainly can cause blindness. So for many, many reasons, I think it's really important to routinely check in with your eye doctor just to maintain vision health and brain health.
Actually, one of a relevant question would be if a person has glaucoma, does that impact the outcome of the scans that you're doing for Alzheimer's?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have validated this technology on a wide variety of eye conditions. Most of our studies show anywhere between 60 to 86% of people having at least one or more eye condition present. It's important that we train the models using very diverse data because we want to make sure it works in the real world with people who have eye conditions. And so there are limits on where it can work. Most notably, if people have very, very advanced cataracts where we just can't get a picture of the eye, we can't run the analysis. But otherwise, we include all of these conditions when we train the models. And so it performs well according to all of our data to date.
So, when you say early, I mean, we know from scanning studies and scanning research that amyloid can be present in the brain a decade or more before a person ever sees a symptom. So, when we say early, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about decades before a person? What do we know about this technology in terms of how accurate and how early it can really detect pathology of Alzheimer's?
Yeah, so in our studies, we've seen that the retinal signals that correspond with amyloid absolutely can be detected in folks who are cognitively normal. We have some longitudinal studies underway, but not yet at the sort of 10 plus, 20 plus years. So we have to rely on other research that's been done in the field. And that body of research tells us that you can detect these signals anywhere from 10 to 17, maybe 20 years in advance of symptoms. So this provides a really important opportunity and window for early detection and potentially even being able to take part in clinical trials focused on prevention or getting access to therapy should they be available in the future.
Now, currently, you're using RetiScan to compare the accuracy to other testing methods. I think it's both CSF, like spinal taps, right? Where a patient is, the spinal fluid is removed for analysis and looking for those biomarkers, or PET scans, which have always been kind of the gold standards have always been those two methods. And now we have the blood test, right? And so I think you're running comparative analysis, but tell us a little bit about those comparisons and what you're seeing and what data you have now.
Yeah, so our goal up front is just to align as closely as possible with the accuracy of gold standard tools like PET or the lumbar puncture for cerebral spinal fluid, spinal tap, but also to make it much more scalable and accessible and completely non-invasive. So you're right, PET scans are excellent. They are the gold standards, but they're expensive, hard to get access to. Blood tests are really promising, but they're still in the early stages and they still have some complexity with their logistics, cold storage, all of that. But the retina really offers an incredibly accessible way to detect signs of Alzheimer's disease and particularly amyloid in everyday care. And so we're really excited about that. The technology itself, RetiSpec's technology, has been under development for over a decade. It actually started at the University of Minnesota in the Center for Drug Design and was invented by two incredible medicinal chemists named Swati More and Bob Vince. And so they worked on the early development and validation of this, and then RetiSpec came in and was able to license the technology. And since 2018, has been building a body of evidence. We have 14, 15 studies to date where we've really been iterating on this technology, learning how to refine it, how to improve it, and always comparing against those gold standards to ensure that we are developing this in as rigorous and robust a way as possible.
So you mentioned the bioHermes study. What was the comparison there? Like, do you have the results, and what's the percentage of accuracy compared to the other methods?
Yeah, so we, in the bioHermes 1 study, we ran a sub-study in that parent study of 271 participants. And in that study, we were comparing against amyloid PET as the gold standard. We also had blood-based biomarkers in that study. And in our target population, we had an area under the curve, or a technical name for agreement, of about 83%. So for us, this was a good milestone. Really important to mention that this technology was validated in a manner that was blinded, meaning we didn't have access to results, which is not always the case for digital biomarkers. And the results were held out by a third party. It was conducted in an incredibly rigorous manner. And you had mentioned blood previously. So we actually did a head-to-head comparison with the blood-based biomarkers. And these results were presented at the Clinical Trials in Alzheimer's Disease Conference just last year. So we're excited for this year as well. And what we presented on the podium there was that the RetiSpec results were completely comparable to the blood-based biomarkers when we compared against amyloid PET. What was interesting, though, was that among the results, we had imaged 271 participants that we were analyzing, and only a subset of these actually all had enough of the blood-based biomarker results. So in some cases, the tubes, I don't know, there was some issue with the tubes or there wasn't enough sample in there. So for us, this really was an indication that a simple technology like ours can provide value in cases where some of these other tests may not be applicable or appropriate or work fully.
How expensive are they? I mean, the technology itself, I would assume people need to buy the technology in order to determine whether, whether these biomarkers are present. So how does that work exactly? I mean, cost is such a big thing, right? And with the blood tests, people are excited because it's bringing the cost. When you go from PET scan to blood tests, it's a lot cheaper than it is, getting a scan or a CSF. So how much would scanning cost? I'm assuming it's not, you have to get the technology in order to do this. So how is that ecosystem? How are you working that out? Or is it
Yeah,
too early days?
so we have established really, really great partnerships. We focus on building great AIs and we lean on our partners who already do all the heavy lifting on the equipment. So I mentioned the cameras that we use are already in sort of thousands of eye doctors' offices around the globe, tens of thousands. So people don't have to buy that camera. If they don't have one, we can work with our partners at TopCon Healthcare to provide one of the cameras for them. But they're ubiquitous cameras. They're not that expensive, and we don't charge for them. So the exciting thing about this technology is that when we are through regulatory review, hopefully very successfully soon, we are able to use CPT codes that are already existing. So that
Wait,
means that folks
what
who
does CPT codes mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a reimbursement code so that folks who are seeking care, who meet the criteria for the test, won't have to pay out of pocket. It's an insurance covered test, and which means that you can have access to this without having to pay anything. And because it's AI driven, all the costs of development are just upfront. It's running the studies with PET that costs all the money. After that, it's really just servers and electricity. So we're able to provide this in a really cost-effective way, which is core to our mission. We want early, accessible detection at scale. So it's important to us that this be affordable and reach as many people who want and need it as possible.
Laura is asking if there's any research studies looking for participants at this time.
There are actually, that's a great question. So I've mentioned the BioHermes study a couple times. So the Global Alzheimer's Platform is currently conducting the BioHermes 2 study. This is the study of more than 1,000 participants. They are still recruiting folks right now. So I'd encourage anyone who's interested to check out their website. And we also have a study underway right now at Toronto Memory Program in Toronto, Canada. So if folks are interested, it's certainly worth checking that out. Or you can contact us on our website. We can send you to a local partner who's running a study if that's of interest.
Catherine, what do you think this means for the diagnostic ecosystem in terms of the ability to maybe go to your optometrist and find out, oh, you have a biomarker of Alzheimer's? I mean, it opens a whole new ecosystem to diagnostics. What do you think this is going to mean? And I mean, obviously, you're going to be biased because you're representing the technology, but I'm curious from your vantage point in terms of what you're seeing with trials and all of that. And again, for our community, and we're not representing a product or anything. We really believe it's an individual's choice. Um, we're fascinated with the changes of technology, but it's a big decision. It's like getting your genetics tested, right? And so the fact that it's an eye scan is it's a kind of a different animal because you could be going to the doctor, the optometrist for something else, and then finding this out. So it's kind of opening the door to all new ethics considerations. So from your vantage point, what do you think it's going to do to the whole diagnostic ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we are at a really, really exciting inflection point. We we weren't really sure what this would mean in the real world, just to be candid. And so part of our development process and part of the evaluations and studies that we've done have included real world studies where we actually put this technology in optometry settings and in ophthalmology settings. And we tested not only what the clinical workflows look like, what the accuracy was, but importantly, what patients felt about this, what clinicians felt about this, what care partners and loved ones felt about this, because that's really, really critical to understanding how this technology can be valuable, where it can be useful, where we need to be mindful of friction. And I will be honest, we were not sure what was going to happen. And we were really fortunate to receive a grant from the Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative to test this in real world settings. And what we found was that optometry is a really, really effective channel. I didn't realize this, but they already have very closely established referral pathways to both primary care and neuro specialists, partly because of what you mentioned at the top around detecting signs of brain tumors or strokes in some cases or MS. And so they already have those channels established. Certainly not everybody coming into an optometry office is going to opt into something like this. But what we found in our study is that a lot of folks who have struggled to have their concerns taken seriously when they report just questions about their memory or noticing changes. They were sort of, it was brushed off as normal healthy aging, or let's watch and wait and see, when folks inherently knew something was wrong and were looking for answers. So this access point in optometry offered them, something biologic that they could hold in their hand and take to a specialist or primary care provider for follow-up care. So, we weren't sure how it was going to proceed, but we were really delightfully surprised at the feedback we got from patients, families, providers, and the system as a whole. So we're optimistic. And if I might add, something that's become apparent to us over the last few years is that there is a movement in eye care to advance this idea of healthcare from the eye. So in the same way that we use the eye as a window into what's happening in the brain, other companies and clinicians and scientists are using it as a window into systemic health, cardiovascular health, renal health. It is an incredible non-invasive access point. And so there's a big initiative happening right now between regulators, reimbursement, partners in equipment, and big tech companies, not small diagnostic startups, who are moving this forward. And I think, in a couple of years, everybody going into their eye doctor is going to be offered new different technologies to quickly, simply understand how their health is doing, their systemic health.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space to keep an eye on. And of course, there's a lot of considerations, right? It's I mean, a brain tumor is never good news, but like a disease like Alzheimer's is really quite complicated, right? And so it's interesting to see this space emerge. I do think people's voice on this topic will be so important, and respecting the choice of knowing and not knowing. It's kind of like your genetics in a way, because we know with amyloid, you could have amyloid. There are people who have had amyloid in their brains and they never show symptoms of Alzheimer's, right? So there's this tricky ethical question that comes in to a very complicated landscape. But then the argument for is that earlier detection is definitely better, right? You can do more at an earlier phase. So it will be really interesting to see this space develop. And Catherine, thank you so much for your expertise and your thoughts. We'll keep an eye on this space. We also have a couple people asking Um, well, Patrick has just asked, what will the optometrist refer to an ophthalmologist or directly to a neurologist? Okay, so do we know about that patient pathway at all? You first see your optometrist who says, "Oh, wait, maybe you should see an ophthalmologist," or would you just go straight to the neurologist?
Yeah, if I can quote Phyllis Farrell, if you've seen one health system, you have seen one health system. So, I think we're going to ultimately see a few different models of care. In general, when we are working with the optometry and ophthalmology academies, associations, we're working through some of those pathways. I believe there are going to be multiple ways that folks will flow into care. It will depend on whether they're community-based or in a hospital setting. But when we talk to the clinicians, the optometrists and the ophthalmologists, they are perfectly comfortable referring either to a specialist or primary care. It really depends on the network. I wish I had a
Yeah,
simple, it's
we're not
definitely
at
this
like,
one, because it's not how it really.
yeah. And it's not your job to sort out the healthcare system. That's like a lot of people have failed at that. And then I see a couple of people have asked about the study, so we can link to the biohormone study to our viewers who are watching. We'll put in a link so that you can find out more. Hopefully, they have a page with information on it, but we'll get that to everyone. So, Catherine, thank you so much. Keep us posted. It's an exciting time. I guess I wanted to end with asking, how far away are we from actually clinics using this technology? I mean, right now you're looking at studies to determine accuracy, but the next step would be if deemed a diagnostic tool for Alzheimer's, is that something that has to go through FDA approval? Like, how long will that take?
Yeah, so we are actively preparing for our, it's called a pivotal study that we will submit to the regulators, so FDA and Health Canada. And it is our hope that we will be able to offer this in market towards the end of next year, or worst case, a little bit after that. But we are on the cusp. It is many years of development in the making. We have an incredible team and partners, but that's what's next for us, and we're very, very excited.
Great. Thank you so much. If you will, we obviously will link to RetiSpec for people who want to know more, as well as the biohermes study. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter because that's when we tell you about talks like these. The Alzheimer's diagnostic technology space is obviously getting really exciting and interesting, and being patient will always keep you abreast of the latest. So thank you, Catherine, and good luck with all of your work. We look forward to hearing more about these studies, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time and attention. Really, really grateful to be here.
So we'll see you all next time. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on beingpatient.com. Thanks, everyone.